Welcome to the Australian Motor Heritage Foundation in Sydney. My name's Rod Chivers, and our special guest today is Bob Barnard. Many of you would know Bob as the designer and entrepreneur involved with the 1985 Adelaide Formula One Grand Prix, resurrecting Phillip Island for the 1989 500cc motorcycle Grand Prix, and also designing the Eastern Creek race, which held the 1991 500cc motorcycle Grand Prix. Bob's in Spain these days, so welcome, Bob.
Hey Rod, nice to be here. Very, very happy to be here and helping the Heritage Foundation.
Oh, thank you
That's
very
good.
much. And so, what many of us may not realise is Bob was involved in the design of dozens of other circuits around the world and is still working. And those three Australian circuits that I just mentioned, of course, are still operating, which is, I think, a tribute to good design. Um, but Bob, if we may, let's go back to the your early days of racing. Obviously, a man of good taste. You raced a Morgan and an Elfin in Adelaide. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, growing up in England, I could never afford to go racing, but I came to Australia and gradually accumulated enough. And I actually bought a road-going Morgan just because I love them. I still
They're
think they're
fabulous.
a car. And I joined the Sporting Car Club and I started to do some, circuit sprints and hill climbs and stuff. And then decided to get a bit more serious because I was obviously working at doing that all right. Um, so I bought another Morgan, stripped that down in Laurie um, Cousin's workshop actually, and rebuilt that to sort of put it on the track. And again, had some great success with that. It was good fun. Um, and I was working at the highways department at that time, and I left to go and join McMahon as a private company. So I got my superannuation, my retirement fund. And what would a red-blooded guy do with his retirement fund but go and buy a race car? So that's how I bought the Elfin, and just sort of moved up and again, as you've seen some of the results, I had some good fun with that car. I had some good people like David Madras to race against.
So
And,
let's move on to early Adelaide design, and I think we have a photo here of a very early design, which you may or may not take credit for.
no, I wasn't involved with that initial work. A guy called Don Breeden out of Melbourne was, and of course you had Bill O'Gorman and those guys all working at it. And they looked at, they obviously, the whole point of this race was to show off Adelaide. That was the first thing I ever got told by Mal Hammerling is you're not building a racetrack for 24 prima donnas. You're showing off Adelaide. So, obviously they wanted it to go through the heart of the city, but, that became obviously totally impractical. And thanks to good old Colonel Light, they gradually sort of moved the track to the east. There were lots of different variations of this thing until they came upon where they actually had it, because that sort of ended up being almost the perfect site. You could do it, you could still have all the backdrop of the city without, the enormous disruption of putting it down Kim Williams Street. So
Yeah, well,
it's
it certainly ended up very different to that version, but something I was always a bit curious about is the horse racing track. Um, Closed quietly in 2007, but how did that coexist with the motor racing circuit for so long? Was it a bit of a Warwick Farm style changeover?
um, okay. Well, it was a sort of bit of a strange marriage, and I guess because they were on the public parkland, they sort of had to do what the government wanted them to do. But in the end, it turned out to be a very good relationship. There were, two, I guess, key headaches is that we had to get inside the horse race track. So the track had to cross the horse track in two places. Um, but fortunately, that wasn't actually an actual part of the horse race track. It was the cool down area, if you want to call it. It's the rundown area. So what we did, we depressed the track a little bit in that area, and between races, we laid visqueen on it, and then covered it with pine bark, which gave the horses something soft to run on.
Right.
And I must admit, we had our fingers crossed when we first unveiled it after the, to do the 1986 race. We had to pull it back up, and it was in perfect condition, so it worked very well. The other problem was the pit building. We wanted to build something substantial. We didn't want something intense or anything else. Didn't want to look, heck, we were showing off Adelaide, we were showing off Australia about what we could actually do. And of course, they didn't want a pit building in the middle of their horse race
No.
track because you couldn't see the far side, you couldn't see the start or anything else. So, like a lot of this stuff, we worked with your local companies. Hallweld, I think this one was, and sort of gave them the problem. And they come up with this incredible system of how to panelize this pit building and put it up and take it down every year. But other than that, it worked well because they had the second race course. I don't know if it was Morphettville or one of the others. So they could actually sort of suspend or they could manage their season by moving, shutting this down for the months we needed it and moving it over. And in the end, I mean, we actually co-sponsored some of the races with some of our sponsors came on board. And so I think it was a good marriage in the end. We used some of their facilities. We did some improvements. So, it worked very well, actually. You wouldn't expect it to, but it did.
Very good. So let's move on to Phillip Island now. And of course, hard to imagine now, but Phillip Island had a history of poorly presented surfaces, I think partly because they couldn't get the equipment across the bridge.
Yeah.
Of course, now it's one of our best and favourite tracks in Australia. But something I'm always been a bit curious about is why you had to shorten Repco Corner.
All right, two reasons for that. That's how I fell in love with this track because I went and raced there in historics. That was the only people that went and raced there back in those days. They just say the surface was atrocious. Some of our guys wouldn't go there because the chip seal would damage the car, etc. Anyway, one of the things that was obvious is that, well, two things are obvious. One is if you go all the way up to the dam wall, which is what that old track did, you have no runoff whatsoever. Now, for us, it probably didn't matter that much. In fact, I was pretty appalled when I went there to actually redesign it, considering what I'd raced on. There were concrete tanks, there were bullpens, there were all sorts of obstacles in the way that as a driver, you just sort of have tunnel vision. Anyway, so there was, I knew for the motorcycles that would never work, so we had to shorten it. But there was a second reason, is the water leaked from underneath that damn wall all the time. So that section of racetrack always had a problem in terms of keeping the pavement down. It was always breaking up. So kill two birds with one stone, shorten the corner up, still keep the similarity, keep the heritage of the place. And, I know some people, oh, well, the old track was better. Well, it wasn't because it was too dangerous and you couldn't keep the pavement on it anyway. So,
Well, that
the
little
other
bit of
one, Mhm.
that little bit of circuit is still there, and it's a pretty handy place to park your car trailers. So it's not wasted.
No, and I mean the other thing that we did, we changed MG um, because the Warren Willing, if you remember Warren, God rest his soul, fabulous guy. He said to me, he said, like, the bikes will never get through that corner as it is. They will burn all the clutches and everything else. It's too slow. It's too abrupt. I mean, I knew that from when racing my Elfin that you basically threw it through that corner and just heard it grunch and carried on. So we actually didn't change it much, but we raised it so to take more of that dip out of it and make it better. And it's not just the best track in America, in Australia. You just got to you need to know that around the world, especially in the world of motorcycling, this is the track. The talk of moving the GP from there to somewhere else is crazy because the riders absolutely love this racetrack.
Yep,
It's
understand that.
what's brilliant about this racetrack is it's so simple. It looks on paper, it's simple. You go out and drive around it, it feels fabulous. And then you realize that to actually get a lap time, you really got to screw your courage to the post because it demands so much out of you to get the real time out of it. But other than that, it's just a lovely track to do. And it's got the backdrop and everything else about it. But yeah, it's just
Terrific. All right. Well, let's move on to Eastern Creek, which is where
Mhm.
we are
Yep.
today. Um, Now, here's an early plan.
Yes.
I guess you're not going to take credit for this one with the
Oh yeah. No, no,
writing.
no. I was there from the get-go in this one. So no, I take full full blame for this one. This was a bit of I was never totally happy with it, but nowhere in a designing a racetrack do you get a blank piece of paper. All right. You've always got constraints. There's always things. Yeah, and the government said, okay, well, we've got this bit of land, which I actually knew about, strangely, because Bill O'Gorman, his father-in-law owned this piece of property, right? We were looking to put a track on it way back. So I knew the place. But I didn't know about the farmer's field over the back. But the government said, well, we'll build the racetrack after that whole business with John Cain and tobacco, etc., at Phillip Island. Um, and yeah, it was going to be, would have its challenges, that's for sure. But a crazy story is that I went to Geneva, I think, at the time, and talked to the FIM and said, hey, yeah, we're going to move this. We're going to take the track to race to Sydney. Is that all right? This is what the track's going to look like. And they said, yes, God bless you. And I literally got off the plane coming back, and the government's man was there, and he says, we're not buying that piece of land anymore. You've got to change it and build it somewhere else. So yeah, it was like, I only had about 11 months to build this thing in the first place, and then all of a sudden you get given a completely different piece of land, because they didn't want the politics of having to compulsorily purchase this guy's property. I mean, the joke was we were halfway through building it, and he decided to sell it anyway. So that's where the speedway is now, and the kart track is in there. So it's one of those strange stories, but it is, you got to work with what you've got. And I mean, personally, I think the current layout is absolutely great. I mean, it's like you say,
It is, but
it's survived.
I'm particularly curious about that right-hand corner at the end of the straight, if you can see that screen.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
what hap why was that considered?
Well, there was no option. You wanted, that's where the track had to go from the topography. And there was only one place on this circuit in this design where the pits could be, and that was along that road. So that's where they were, and you couldn't have that straight coming straight down to the pits. I don't know if you're probably not familiar with Magny-Cours in France, but that's exactly what they did in Magny-Cours. And then they spent another 10 million building another piece of track to try and fix the problem. So it was a needs must type situation. I mean, it was a great overtaking opportunity, obviously, but it just needed that runoff distance from where that corner is to where the pits are to make sure this thing works safely. Um, yeah, as I say, it's sometimes you get given things that you just have to try and make them work. And that was one, but in the end, I mean, the going over that road and relocating that road, we went into a very difficult piece of property in terms of the soils and drainage and stuff. Um, but in the end, it gave us a much better racetrack. And as you say, the time has proven. I mean, the politics getting this thing built was unbelievable. I mean, I mean, and I look back and it's like, well, thank goodness we did build it because, in reality, I know you've now got some other choices, but at the time, for a long time, this was the only place you could really go. Bathurst is not available all the time.
Mm.
So, I feel very happy and proud. I mean, I've got friends who race, so this is their favorite racetrack,
Yeah,
which is
no,
great.
it's great.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about have you been back to Sydney since the extension was built in 2012? And what are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, I have to be careful what I'm saying because I know the people that designed it, and I think it's one of those things that someone, they wanted an extension and there wasn't much else place to go, and I don't know that it works particularly well. I haven't been there and seen it in live, but yeah, what it did say was the demand for using this track is so high that we need to be able to, do an extension. And so, and particularly when you start spending money on the lights, the hoo-ha, as I said, the politics trying to build this with, all this public money is going to waste, etc. And now they've spent more money on this racetrack since the Knights did in the first place. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
think
feel
that
pretty
the
good.
benefit.
I
Yeah,
really, I see, I see that, I see the photos now of those night races and stuff, and I think it just looks spectacular. The place looks fabulous. So
I think the
yeah,
benefit of the extension is has proved to be the fact that you can run two circuits at the same time. The complete
yes,
circuit is not used very often, but look, I quite enjoy it, and yeah, but it's double the rental, so that's got to be good for the
yeah.
MRDC.
Yeah, that's exactly something I try and build into all my tracks these days is to have that ability. Even I've got a track in Tennessee which is quite short, it's 2 miles, but we can split it into two 1 miles because it does give you that ability to, especially in sort of the membership type clubs that I'm building, keeps the members happy because they've always got somewhere to go, and it lets you then rent the track out to somebody else. As you say, it's a business, and unless you're making money, you're not going to stay in business. So it's and truthfully, I mean, the private enterprise, private motorsport club, which is the model in America these days, is truly the only thing that's really making any money because spectator racing is so difficult to make money out of. These things are growing all the time. As you said, I've got actually 7 tracks in America, all of them private country club type tracks that I'm building and working on right now. So it's a really boom industry in that country. So
It looks like we're going to get one in New South Wales, up in the Hunter Valley, in a couple of years. So,
Mhm.
but obviously over your time, so we've sort of covered the three tracks. You spent a lot of time working with state governments, at least three, maybe more. I won't ask you which was the worst state government to work with, but I'll ask you which was the best state government to work with.
Well, they're all great to work with when they want something. That's the problem. Um, Yeah, Adelaide was terrific at the start, and then I got shoved out of there after 2 years. Sydney was fabulous at the beginning until everything started to go pear-shaped with the politics, and then they weren't so happy. So yeah, that politicians are the same the world over. Yeah, they'll all help you when they want something, and then when they don't, see you later. We'll go and find somebody else. Yeah, so that's a true story. Yeah.
So, are there any other circuits in Australia that we should know about? Maybe some that haven't got off the ground. I think you had a look at Darlington Park at one stage in Queensland, but that's now lost. Are there any other stories we should know about Australian circuits?
Well, Bathurst is a strange one. I've off and on I've been consulted and asked what should we do about the second circuit in Bathurst, and so I've sort of been on the written edges of that a bit, and what I've said to him is make it a private club. That's it's going to make any money, it's turning into a private. It doesn't have to be private all the time. That's the thing, it can still run races on the weekend or whatever. But that's a membership base is the only way to actually raise that money, unless the government's going to stump up, which I can't see it hasn't happened, has it? And it's been going on for so long now. Yeah, I've looked at some different ones, but not much lately. To my mind, I don't know if Australians really remember me much or think I don't do any more work or whatever, out of sight, out of mind. I don't.
You better
Maybe
come
maybe
back
the
for another
problem is
visit.
we are. Well, I haven't been back for a long time, so my life is very full. I live in this beautiful old house in Spain and enjoy that enormously. Um, but I still say I've got lots of work with both circuits and also expert witness work in motorsport litigation, both from injury and from construction. So it keeps me well and truly occupied. So,
Good.
unless
So,
someone says, "Hey, Bob, we've got some money, we want to go and build a racetrack," I can't imagine I'm going to will come back very much. So, yeah.
so you must be fairly close to the banked circuit at Sitges, Terramar.
Oh, that's about 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any
I,
any likelihood that'll get used for more than just a Red Bull stunt?
um, it's been tried a lot. The residents, as you can imagine, around it are totally opposed to it. It's an amazing, amazing circuit. I've walked it, and the banking is unbelievable. I mean, there's no other track that's like it's almost vertical when you get to the top.
Mhm.
It's incredible, and the banking is actually in really good shape for something that's built in 1923. As an engineer, I look at it like, how the hell did you build this, right? It's interesting, like the flat straights are all broken up, but the banking's fabulous, which is the piece you see all the time. Um, yeah, I mean, for some uses, it could get revived, um, but it's got to be a very interesting mix. It's got incredible history. I mean, it only ran for a couple of years because it kept killing people. I mean, when you go and you look at it, you don't wonder that they did, But it is a fabulous piece of history, and well, we drive past it almost daily to see it. So, yeah, it's an amazing place. As you say, you see it for Cooper adverts and Red Bull and all sorts of people use it for ads because it is so spectacular.
Okay, we better wind up shortly, but a couple of final questions. Where did you meet your current wife? See ya.
All right. So back in 92 and 93, I was employed by Kenny Roberts, the motorcycle champion and team, and initially in Spain. And then he wanted to run the motorcycle Grand Prix at Laguna Seca. And so he said, well, okay, you can come and promote that for me. So I ended up in Monterey, wonderful Monterey, California. And as a newbie in America, really, I didn't know a lot. So I sort of went to the font of knowledge as I thought. I went to met the ticketing manager who knew who bought tickets, what price you sold them for, how did you advertise them, et cetera, which is all the things I needed to know. And turned out to be this wonderful lady who had a great mind. And we fell in love with our minds first up because she thought I was a genius, which was a good start, And one thing led to another, and so I stole her from Laguna Seca after I left, and here we are 30 years later, or more than 30 years later, we're still together and very happy. So it's good.
And where
You
did you
can
get
ask.
married?
Well, where would you get married, Rod? If you had a choice, you're in Australia, you don't want to do it in a church. We thought about a parkland setting, and I said, well, there's only one park to do it in. That's Victoria Park. So we got married on the start finish line of my very first racetrack. All right. So
Excellent. How
that's
romantic.
what it was. We didn't have a lot of money at that time because I was going through a bankruptcy because of Phillip Island. And we just said to friends, hey, we're getting married. If you want to turn up, that's good. And we go to the pub afterwards, which is exactly what we did. So
Plenty of
it
those
was
in
the pub.
Adelaide. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's some great memories of pubs and pub meals, etc. So it's cool. Yeah.
fantastic. All right. Well, look, thanks very much, Bob, for your time today. And thanks to Peter Tomlinson, our
Yeah.
IT man, for putting all this together. And wish you all the best. And if ever you're back in Sydney, please pop in and see us at the foundation. And all right, we'll put a photo of your book up. Australia Post tells me mine will arrive tomorrow. Um, so I'm looking forward to that. But we'll put a link to Lulu. So if anyone wants to buy a copy, from what I've seen already, it looks like a great read. So thanks again, Bob, and wish you all the
Okay.
best.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Peter, and have a good day. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.